6 minutes to 9. There's nothing quite like a good spy story to stir the tabloid juices and even the most straight-laced journalist. All it needs is a naive older politician allegedly caught up in a honey trap, and that the spy should be Russian, female and pretty, preferably blonde. And if she wears short skirts and there are pictures of her smiling seductively, so much the better. Well, we've got all that in the latest one, and what makes it even juicier is that the lady in question was actually given a job as a parliamentary researcher and could wander the corridors of power, free to hoover up all the secrets that came her way. Should we hide under our beds or laugh out loud? Well, Sir Christoper Meyer knows about this sort of thing. At least he should. He's been a diplomat for years, rose at the top of the tree, our man in Washington. I'm also joined by Lord West, who was no less than the nation's security minister under the last government. Sir Christoper Meyer, I bet you were inveigled into the odd honey trap in your time, weren't you?
Well, not exactly. I mean,
No?
there were a number of times when honey traps were laid before me. But as I thought of Queen and Empire, I resisted. I resisted the foul temptation which
We have
then
only your word for
Soviet- and that of the Soviet intelligence services,
Well, that's that.
who gnashed their teeth with frustration as I rejected both homo and heterosexual temptation.
What, they tried you with both?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well, that's what they did. And
What,
I
at the same
suspect-
time, or-
No, my dear chap. I don't think the KGB was bisexual in those days, if I'm allowed to say that.
I think you are.
But I've said it now.
Quite.
But I mean, that was honey traps were always around in the old Soviet days.
Really?
It's a very traditional country, and I think that includes its intelligence services. So I'm not at all surprised to hear this stuff at all, that they're still honey trapping away in the halls
Look,
of the House of
I
Commons.
really desperately want to know how far the honey trap got with you. I mean, do you want to be, here's your chance.
Well, I mean, it got nowhere at all because it
Didn't
was
it?
so ludicrous and so clumsy. Once in Moscow, once somewhere else out in one of the republics of the Soviet Union.
Right.
It was so crass that you had to laugh. And, so there you go.
Well, I hesitate to ask you whether given your background, highly distinguished, again, Admiral, all that sort of stuff. I mean, were you ever... I'm not tempted. I was about to say tempted. No, of course you weren't tempted. Obviously you weren't tempted, but we were ever approached.
I generally assume that if some very attractive young girl thought that an old blighter like me was so gorgeous, witty, charming and delightful, that there was something funny behind it. And the answer is yes, it was. And the one occasion it got very close, my leading steward who was looking after me sacrificed his body for the nation.
No.
So all they got was a leading steward instead of the chief of defence intelligence. And I
did he
thought
get
he
in
deserved a
return?
gong for that. But anyway, that's enough of that, I think.
Quite. Did he get an MBE or something unmentionable?
I don't think I could mention any more on this
Best to
programme.
draw a veil over it. Is there a serious aspect to this? I mean, should we be worried, as a former security minister?
I think there are a couple of aspects. One is it's of interest, I think, that the level of Russian espionage has risen again. When the Soviet Union collapsed, I think there was a hope that perhaps this would fall away. It's greater than it was, and that, of course, means it uses assets from the security service. So they're having to use people to cover espionage when actually there are very serious threats of Al-Qaeda-inspired terrorism. Northern Ireland terrorism is rising. There are pressure. So that is upsetting. And a lot of that espionage was to do with commercial advantage and to do with industrial espionage, but a whack of it is still to do with defence, particularly stuff to do with our nuclear deterrent, particularly stuff to do with things that give us global capability.
Right, but mostly commercial now, Chris Meyer.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I hear what Lord West said. I've always been told by friends and contacts in MI5 that the targets are very widespread. They were certainly commercial and economic when I was in the Foreign Office back in the 80s and 90s. As well as defence. And I think they pick the targets they want to pick, and commercial, economic and defence, that's all in the mix. Plus political blackmail if they can manage it.
But you look at what's on WikiLeaks, to take just that single example, though it's a massive example, admittedly, and you wonder why anybody has to bother any longer.
Well, despite the massive information that's been dumped by WikiLeaks and the massive information you can find anyway on the internet, there's always more to be garnered. And I think the challenge of penetrating, if I can put it that way, the very heart of the British establishment to find out more things is a temptation which the Russians simply cannot resist, whether communist or capitalist.
And should, Lord West?
I was going to say what it allows allows you to do as an analyst is you're able to pull all these pieces together, and an analyst can then make more out of it. So yes, they are targeting things. I think what's very interesting in this case is in the Palace of Westminster, that is not a state department. Therefore, things like vetting are not run by the security service. And I do think that the Palace of Westminster needs to have a think about this and say, what checks do we actually do? I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that this man had lots of Russians assisting him. I mean, there are lots of British students who are quite capable. I mean, I find it quite extraordinary, really. And I do think the Palace of Westminster needs to look at it a little bit more closely.
Well, it's all pretty cack-handed, isn't it? Do you despair when you see that sort of thing, Chris Meyer? You've got about 10 seconds.
To a degree, yes. I do despair. That's the short answer. I do despair when I see that. It's ludicrous.
And have we lost any big secrets in your time?
Who's the question being
You,
addressed to?
go on. You.
I'm the faintest.
Yes or no will do.
No, the Admiral knows the answer.
The
not
Admiral
me.
knows the answer. Any, Alan, quick one, question, secret?
One always has to assume that the enemy is getting hold of secrets.
Right, got it. Alan West, Lord West and Christopher Meyer, thanks both very much.